Hi everybody, I hope you're keeping well. Today I wanted to talk about the poetry of Sylvia Plath. I'm not going to do a whole boring kind of bio thing about her life and all that sort of thing. There's loads of other places you can go and find out about this sort of stuff. I just wanted to kind of talk about her generally and the effect her poems have on me. So this is an amazing poet called Sylvia Plath. She was born in 1932 and she's an American poet and she's absolutely phenomenal. She wrote several books, Colossus and Other Poems, which was the only book released in her lifetime, and it has very vivid, very imaginative poems, as all these books do. Then there was Ariel, which was released in 1965. This was released posthumously, as are the other two books I'm about to show you. I think for me, if I have to pick one Sylvia Plath book to read on the train, I think I would kind of pick this one, because it has kind of the most kind of hits in it, you know, like the most well-known of her poems. There's one called Daddy and one called Cut, and both of those are absolutely just phenomenal poems. And again, if you want to hear these poems or any of her kind of poems, I recommend that you kind of just type her into YouTube and then Google her and, you know, find her on Wikipedia and all these other places. But she's a phenomenal poet who kind of was married to another poet called Ted Hughes. They were married, they had a very tempestuous marriage. They were married in 1956 until about, I think it was about 1960. But that was her kind of drive. I think, you know, had they not met, her circumstances would have been a bit different. But, you know, for me today, I'd just like to say how much I really enjoy the poems, because they're so vivid. But another thing is, she somehow tapped into some supernatural entity or spirit or something. It's almost like she was plugged into the electric mains. She came out with so many amazing poems in her lifetime. In her short lifetime, she was only kind of 30 years old when she sadly passed away. But she had something that I don't think any other poet has had. I think some of this may have to do with her depression, but she suffered from quite bad depression over her life, and she had several attempts at suicide. At one point she was put into an institution where they kind of electrode her head or something like that. So, you know, and all of that stuff had an influence, you know, being plugged into the mains and being so kind of high-wired and having all of this stuff in her past about her mental health and things like that, but she wasn't mentally well a lot of the time. But again, it's a double-edged sword. As much as it damned her, it helped her a lot. It really did, because these poems are just kind of the most fantastical sorts of vivid poetry you could imagine. And I started reading these books thanks to a kind book voucher from Natalie. I started reading Ariel, and then that was it. Everywhere I go and I'd see a book of hers, I'd get an itch and I'd kind of buy it. It's almost like she's talking to me through her poems from beyond the grave. It's almost like that she's sort of like beckoning me to, well, being a writer myself, you know, she kind of beckons you to kind of like read her, and then that kind of influences your own style a bit. But she's a fantastical person. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a great end. You know, her story ends, she was 30 years old. She died in February 1963. She kind of basically, well, I have to be honest in this video, is about people doing things. She put her head in the oven, which I think is a consequence of having that high intensity, you know, being plugged into the mains, and, you know, being such a high-wired person. You know, the consequences at the end, you're going to be like that. You're going to kind of take your own life. It's absolutely, to me, just one of the saddest stories in poetry, but she could have done so much more. You know, there's so much more there for her to give, but unfortunately she gambled that, you know, when she did this act of suicide, she kind of gambled that, you know, somebody would be there to help her and that the nanny would turn up on time, and, you know, she kind of gambled a bit. Unfortunately, that gamble didn't pay off, and she died young. But by these books, these wonderful, wonderful books of poetry, she's left us a fantastic fantastic legacy of poetry for which, you know, the world should be eternally grateful. And I'd like to say thank you, Sylvia Plath, for bringing such vivid imagination into the world.